for everyone at OCP. This is a true honor and a pleasure to be with you all today. Tonight, I should say, I'm here live from Mallorca, Spain. Please just let me know with thumbs up that you can hear me and everyone is going well. Okay, great. A thumbs up and a sukkah. Amazing, Sophia. Wonderful. And I'll ask you all, if you don't mind, to mute yourselves. That'd be really wonderful, just because we have about a 45-minute presentation today with about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. And I really encourage this to be as interactive as possible. I know we're actually in my home office here in Mallorca, Spain, but I want us to imagine that we're on this virtual bus tour and we're going to be flying into Majorca Island. It's 9:36 p.m. over here. We're in the evening. And please, as questions come up, feel free. You're not going to bother me. Put them in the chat. If I can get to them while we're watching like a video of some kind, I'll answer. If not, we'll get to the end for the Q&A. So thanks once again, Sophia, for a wonderful introduction. As you can tell, I'm not natively from Mallorca, Spain. I haven't been working on my New Jersey accent for 40-something years. I am a transplant, an immigrant, an expat, whatever you wish to call me. And basically, my story is that I was born and raised in New Jersey. My father is from Netanya, Israel, originally, and my mother is from Westchester, New York. And her parents, my grandparents, were Jewish. They're from Germany. They escaped the Nazis and made it over to the United States. My grandmother came over in 1945. She was actually hiding in France for 7 years. And my grandfather came over in 1941 and actually left out of the port of Barcelona. So it's a pretty neat story, a full circle, if you will, because I was able to get my German passport because of my German roots from my grandparents. And so when I moved to Spain 8 years ago, 2014, people say that it was Basheret because I met my wife, Carla, who actually recently completed her conversion in Teaneck, New Jersey, earlier this year. Her Hebrew name is Kinneret. She's from Barcelona. So when I called home and I spoke to my grandfather to say, hey, I met a girl, she's not Jewish, but she's from Barcelona, his response was, oh, that's wonderful. Barcelona, it's my favorite city in the world. And then I heard my grandmother, of course, in the background saying, Harry, what are you talking about? You were there for all of 2 hours. So, there's this kind of like context that I think is important for us to understand, who I am, where I come from, and why am I here in front of you speaking. And basically, before I get into why I'm here, how the specifics of how I got here, I want us to go back to what I was saying earlier, this idea of traveling, right? A lot of us haven't traveled due to the pandemic. A lot of us have started to, but just go ahead and put in your chat right away. I'd love to see who has been to Mallorca. And if you don't have to say you haven't, who has? So if you have, go ahead and put in the chat. And then once we've done that round, please share if you've ever been to Spain. And if so, where have you been to Spain? So right now, we're all virtually going to go to Spain. I'm actually going to show you where I am on the map so everyone can identify, where is Mallorca. So hopefully everyone can see this map that's right here. And I'm going to open up my box so I can see at the very least, Sophia, who can kind of give me thumbs up as we go along. So you see Spain and Portugal, right? And you see Italy, the boot, okay? So in the middle, hopefully you can see my cursor, are the 4 islands, the Balearic Islands, okay? And they are Menorca in the top right. They are Ibiza on the top left, bottom left. And off of Ibiza is Formentera, okay? Which you cannot fly to. You have to take a flight to Ibiza and then take a ferry to Formentera, okay? There's no airport on that island. And right in the middle is Mallorca. It's where I am calling in from right now. And we're gonna go in deeper and see the capital city, that is Palma de Mallorca. Actually, it was called La Ciutat de Mallorca, the city of Mallorca, all the way up until 1720, when it took back its original Roman name, which is Palms, okay? And you can see here, this avenue that actually is very squiggly and diagonal, and this was the old wall, the medieval walls that surrounded Palma, the city, basically from the years of the 900s up until the late 1800s. So really incredible to think that this, enclosed town was enclosed by this wall for hundreds of years. And we are zooming into our jewel, our crown of the sea, which is La Catedral del Seu, okay, the cathedral by the sea, La Catedral del Mar. And you can take a look at it. It is absolutely stunning. It was started to be built in the year 1300, and it went all the way. It was not completed until the year 1600, 300 years to make this work of art. As you can see, Catholic Church spent a lot of time and money and resources in creating such a grandiose structure. And why am I showing you a cathedral on a Jewish tour of Majorca? It doesn't make sense. It actually does, because the Jewish quarters, plural, there's 2 of them, are right around the cathedral. Okay, so the Jewish quarters are in Palma, and we're going to be exploring the streets of that today. And what I always like pointing out, hopefully you can see this, let me just adjust a little bit, the huge rose window, okay, that you will see right there in the middle of the cathedral. Does anyone notice a symbol in that rose window right here? If you said Star of David, Magen David, you're absolutely correct. There's a lot of theories about why is there a Star of David in this huge cathedral in Majorca. It's actually, in my opinion, the Star of David is not the symbol of the Jews back in medieval times. It's actually the menorah, the candelabra, that is. And really the Star of David becomes very connected to Judaism when Theodor Herzl comes up with the idea of Zionism and puts the Star of David in the future State of Israel flag. Also, the Nazis, with the yellow star to identify Jews, also made, sadly, the Star of David very, very connected to the Jewish faith and religion and culture. But this is what we're talking about today, double identity, you know, a cathedral with the Star of David inside it. We're going to be talking about the secret Jews of Majorca, which I did not know anything about before I had arrived here in 2014. So as we land in Majorca, I want everyone to take a seat back in their homes and their couches and their living rooms, and please look out your virtual window to your left, and please look out your virtual window to your right. And I hope you enjoy a little welcome video that we prepared for you with some little guitar, Spanish guitar music that we hope will get you in the idea, the mood of Spanish visitation and travel. And we hope you all enjoy this little video we prepared for you today. Ah, yes, beautiful Majorca that I see in the chat that many of you have actually been here before. Oh, let me just get that stopped for a second. There we go. You know, really, it's a magical paradise. I mean, those of you who have visited can hopefully concur. It's really, really special. You have the beautiful mountains that has world-class cycling. I mean, the German team of the Tour de France comes down in February and March to train here in Majorca. That's how incredible much cycling there is here. Beautiful coves and beaches. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. And actually home to the famous tennis celebrity that some of you might know. Rafa Nadal is from Majorca Island originally. And I heard someone else's last name is Nadal, and Sophie is speaking before. All that's to say is that, you know, Majorca is got this fame for being, paradise of super yachts and all of this fantastic vacation and tourism, but it's also home to an incredible history, one that I had no idea about before I moved here. I lived in Madrid for a year when I was in college. I went to a place called Wesleyan University in Connecticut. And I was a big studier of Spanish Inquisition, Sephardic history. I'm not Sephardic. I did the DNA testing. I'm literally 99.9% Ashkenazi, even though I feel like I should have some Sephardic in me because I really fell in love with Spain and all that it had to offer. So cut to 2014, I'm producing TV commercials in New York. I needed a break from the rat race. I had just gotten out of a relationship. I was like ready to take a break. And I got a job with a place called Palma Pictures, which is a production company on Majorca. And they were looking for an American producer. So I flew over, I met everyone, I got the job, and I was pretty sure that I was going to be the only Jew living on the island. You may not know this, but France has about 400,000 Jews living there today. Spain has only 40,000 Jews living here today. So you can see that the Inquisition, sadly, did a very good job here in Spain. And I come here and I'm talking to a friend of mine at work, and it comes up that my dad's from Israel, I'm Jewish. He says, oh, you should go to the synagogue. And I was like, synagogue? What synagogue? One that I have to like dig underground to get to, like to go look for the ruins? And they said, no, it's open, it's active. You know, it's just outside the city center. You guys go on Friday nights, right? I was like, yeah, this is incredible. So I looked it up. It was very hard to find, to be honest. I went to the synagogue, and later I would learn that the synagogue was started by British Ashkenazi expats in the 60s and 70s when Franco was still the dictator here. And they fell in love with Majorca. And the first thing they did was buy a plot of land for a Jewish cemetery that was purchased in 1973. And they would meet in a hotel that they would always gather around together. And in 1987, they opened up the Shul that is still active today. So I went and visited, and I'll never forget this experience I had. Because, you know, it's not like the States where, you know, there's someone at the door, oh, where you from, who do you know, no, it was very, very interesting. There was no security, which I thought was odd. I walk in, people are looking, who's the new guy? It was Ashkenazi, but now it's Sephardic. There's no rabbi, there's no chazan, just a volunteer who's speaking in Spanish, leading the prayers in Hebrew. There's a mechitza, a divider between the men's section and the women's section. And I'll never forget this moment when he said, tonight, sorry, we don't have a minyan. We don't have 10 Jewish men in the Orthodox stream of Judaism, so we have to skip the Kaddish. But I looked around the men's section and I counted 14 men. And I was like, I'm pretty sure the number is 10 globally. I don't think it changes by country. The number of minyan is 10, 10 is a minyan. And I asked the gentleman next to me, why are we skipping? There's 14 men, we have a minyan here. And he said, as if I was the one who didn't understand what was going on, oh, well, that's obvious. Some of these men are not Jewish, they're Chueta. And I'd never heard this term Chueta before. Please feel free, go ahead in the chat. If you have heard this word Chueta before today, reading my bio or anything about this chat. And very good, Stephanie, thank you. Yes, we're gonna get to that. Where does this word Chueta come from? So if you haven't heard of Chueta, that's wonderful. I'm so excited to educate 166 people here about this word that has totally become my mission, my drive in life. Please tell me if you have heard of the word Marrano. Marrano, M-A-R-R-A-N-O. I'll put it in the chat so everyone can see it. Not Murano, M-U-R-A-N-O. A lot of people like to think about that. That is a glass that's you can get in Venice, right? No, Marrano is a term that we should not be using anymore. It's actually a terrible insult, but it describes people who have Jewish roots. Look, the chat is going on fire. Look at this, I love it. It's someone who has Jewish roots, or at that time, in medieval times, it was someone who was Christian on the outside, but secretly practicing Judaism on the inside. Where does this word Marrano come from? So there's a couple theories. One is that during the times of the Inquisition, if someone was accused of Judaizing, of practicing Judaism in secret, the Inquisition would take them out of their homes and in public force them to eat pig, right? Or force them to eat pork. And so Marrano comes from the term Marran, which means pig. You're actually calling someone a pig, a dirty swine, a filthy animal. Ugh, you're eating something you shouldn't be eating. Hence Marrano. Another theory, very interesting, says the Jews who didn't convert, who were eventually expelled, who formed today's Sephardic people in the world, They came up with the idea. They were the ones who called their old brothers and sisters who did convert. You were once Jewish, now you converted, you're eating pork, you're a marrano, it's an insult, you're eating something you shouldn't be eating. You are a pig, you are what you eat. And so this is where this term marrano comes from. Very important. Marrano is Spanish and Chueta is Catalan. So let's look at this word together called Chueta. So here you have it, the Secret Jews of Majorca presentation today. There's that's actually the yarmulke from our wedding. We had a Jewish wedding here in Majorca. So I wanted to share that with you all. And here's the word, els Chuetas. It's a Mallorquin word. Mallorquin is a dialect of Catalan, okay? Catalan is the language that they speak in Catalonia, but they also speak a form of it in Valencia, in Ibiza, in Majorca, all of this kind of east coast of Spain. So I like to say the difference between Mallorquin and Catalan is like the difference between British English and American English. So if we have any British speakers here, maybe you'll, fight me on that, say that American English is a completely different language, but we all know that, it's a dialect. So here's our Els Chuetas. And who's, Stephanie, I think you said before, you're the first person who called that out. There's a couple different etymologies of where this word could come from. One is in French, where you say chien is a dog. Again, it's a derogatory term. No one wants to be called a dog. Or chouette, like a female owl, a dark, ominous bird, something not to be trusted. They're chouetta. Okay, maybe. We don't speak French here in Majorca, so I don't really go with the whole French etymology. But again, in my teaching, I like to lay out all the different options and allow you all to decide what you agree with or don't. Now, interestingly, xulla in Catalan means bacon or pork. And because the Chuetas were people who everyone knew who they were, and still to this day, older generations know if you're Chueta or not, because you have one or two of these famous 15 different last names. If you have one of these 15 last names, you are Chueta, which means you are a Catholic descendant of the Jewish-Conversos of Majorca Island, only Majorca. Okay, there's not Chuetas that are originally from Ibiza or Menorca. They're only from Majorca. So because everyone knew where they lived in like a Chueta ghetto, and they were always trying to be Catholic, trying to prove their Catholicism to the rest of society, they would cook bacon and pork in public. Look, I'm using bacon, I'm using pork outside their homes so people could see that they are not keeping kosher, that they are no longer Jewish. Some of them, a small segment, may have been doing this as an outward act and then not eating bacon and pork inside the home. And the last word where this word might come from, the way you say Jew in Catalan is jueu. And a not nice way you call someone Jewish in Catalan is jueto, you little Jew. It's like you small Jew. So listen to it, jueto and chueto. Very, very similar. So here you see a picture of some of my tours that I do live on Zoom and also in person, where that is a street of the Jews, Carrer del Jueus. And you can see a little menorah in the background, in the corner there. And this is part of the recuperation I'm trying to do to recoup this Jewish legacy that we feel was lost. So what I'm going to do today is to walk you through this portion of history in Majorca. We have a 7-part series. Sorry, Ari, to hear the news, but this is part 1 of a huge series where there's so much fascinating information. I hope that I'll be invited back to continue sharing this fantastic knowledge with you all. So we're going to learn about the Jews up until 1435, okay, where there was a mass conversion, right? They were forced to be Catholic. Hundreds of Jews went into a church, got holy water sprinkled on them, and suddenly they were Christian. Which is why in 1492, when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella expel all the Jews, there are no Jews that left Majorca, because 60 years before that, they had just been converted. So that's why in 1435 to 1691 on the island, you have a phenomenon, in my opinion, called crypto-Jews, crypto-Judíos. They were Christian on the outside, but secretly practicing Judaism for 250 years. Can you believe that? No Torah, no synagogue, no rabbis, nothing. They had to find ways to pass on their Judaism in secret, a terrible secret, because the Inquisition was there and they were trying to accuse you and burn you at the stake. They're also called conversos, which is the word we should be using, not marranos. We should be saying conversos. And they're also called new Christians, right? Because they just became Christian. And a new Christian would not marry with an old Christian. Old Christian didn't want to marry because, oof, I don't want a stigma. I don't want to stain my family by marrying someone who was once Jewish. And the new Christian, especially the secret Jew, didn't want their son or daughter to marry an old Christian, because if they were secretly lighting candles on Friday night, this person might go and tell the Inquisition, and then that would be a wrap on that family. After 1691, a terrible burning of the stake takes place where people were burned alive in front of 30,000 people. And from that point on, they were just derogatorily called Chuetas, or people of Segel Street, which is where they lived, or just people of the street, which is like a derogatory term here. You're from this neighborhood, you're from that neighborhood. No, these people are from the street. And these are basically second-class citizens. These 15 families have been marrying within these 15 families for centuries. And only up until as late as the 1960s, 1970s, have they started to be allowed to marry outside of these 15 families. And what's shocking is that today, in 2022, we have people who are Chueta, some people who are not Chueta, who come to our synagogue and want to connect to our Jewish faith. And of course, we are not counting them as minyan, although some people feel like we should, especially the people with the 15 last names, because they have been marrying within these same families. They were forced to convert. They married within the same families. It's like they never left. And actually, some of them have done what's called a return, not a conversion. And so when they've done the whole process, the mikvah, studying, learning, going in front of a Beit Din, they don't get a certificate that says you're converting to Judaism. It says you're returning to the faith of your ancestors. And that's really important for many of them. And so it's a fascinating story, one that I can't wait to keep telling you about. And what we're going to do right now is learn about the medieval times of when the Jews first got to the island. And the way I'm going to do that is by taking you on this virtual tour. We're going to go into, this is very special because it's actually closed right now. We can't even get into it live if we wanted to. A small interpretation center is what it's called. It was just inaugurated in the year 2015, 1 year after I got here. And you're going to see some panels, some maps and descriptions. And I hope you all enjoy this little inside tour of the Interpretation Center here in Mallorca. See you in a flash. 70 years after the birth of Christ, Second Temple is destroyed, and that's when the second diaspora, the people, Jews leaving Israel, was created. So we believe that there are Jews living here since after that time. A lot of Jews came as slaves with Romans, and the Romans, were one of the first people to settle in Mallorca. And we know that there's been Jews here because we found this piece. It's a lamp with a menorah on it, and they say that it dates back to the 4th century or 5th century. And we also know because there's a famous letter. It's amazing that documents have been preserved. By the Bishop Severus, who talks about wanting to convert the Jewish community, not of Majorca, but of Menorca. And this was in the year 418, Common Era, okay? So we know that there's a Jewish community living in Menorca, so we can assume maybe that if there's Jews living in Menorca, perhaps there's Jews living in Majorca as well. So we start seeing Jewish presence in the 400s, okay? There's not a lot of information, but basically we believe that there's been Jews in Mallorca, in the Balearic Islands, through lots of different people conquering the islands, right? The Almohads, the Visigoths, the Vandals, and the Moros, okay? The Moros from North Africa were in control of Mallorca. They called it Medina Mallorca from around the 900s to 1229. 1229 is an important year because it's when Jaime I comes, and he comes from Aragon and he conquers Mallorca, okay? And they believe that he brought many Jews with him from the mainland. They were helping to finance a lot of his conquest. And we know that there were Jews living quite happily under Muslim rule because it's been documented that when he came, there were Jews already waiting for him. So the Jews that were already living here and the Jews that came from mainland came, and they began with these Jewish quarters, which is amazing to see that right where the cathedral is, that actually used to be a mosque, okay, so they built the cathedral on top of the mosque, and right in front of the cathedral is the palace of Al-Mudaina. They believe that's the first Jewish quarter of Mallorca. That's where the Jews lived when they were under Muslim rule.
When Jaime I came, he moved the Jewish quarter to what's known as the Cai Menor, the small Jewish quarter, which is around Segel, Jaime II, and San Bartholomew Street, okay? Right where the Barcelona football store is, right in the middle, and the Banco de España, very close to Plaza Mayor. This is incredible that they built this Jewish quarter, and Jews from all over the Mediterranean started to come to Mallorca, from Alexandria, from Marseille, from all over. Why? Why would Jews come to Mallorca in this time? Yeah, trade, exactly. If you look at Mallorca on the map, it's perfectly located for all of trade routes, all of movements, because at that time, that is the world for those people. They hadn't discovered, Christopher Columbus is in 1492, they haven't discovered other places around the globe. So Mallorca is in a great position, and this is Palma. It's a beautiful city, well protected, big harbor, and so this Jewish quarter is not big enough for all the Jews that are coming, so the king at the time decides to give them Cai Mayor, okay, the larger Jewish quarter. So at the same time, you have a small Jewish quarter and a larger Jewish quarter. We're going to be walking through the larger Jewish quarter today. What we're seeing today are places where a synagogue used to be, places where the Jewish quarter had important landmarks to it. Here is just a nice map showing where all the different synagogues they believe used to be. Okay, we're going to go visit a couple. This is a beautiful map showing the 3 cemeteries they believe were outside of the city wall. In Jewish religion, at that time, the cemeteries were going to always be outside the city wall, on a slope, and near water. Very similar to Montjuic. Have you guys heard of Montjuic in Barcelona? It means Mount of the Jews. They know that there was a cemetery there in medieval times. Okay, so here's our Jewish quarter and the cemeteries outside of it. There are so many incredible Jewish characters, people that are living, that are from Mallorca, like rabbis, philosophers, map makers, mathematicians, doctors, scientists. I mean, they contributed so much. What's that?
Columbus as well.
Maybe Christopher Columbus, exactly, might have Jewish roots. So here is a map by the father and son team, probably the most famous Jews from Mallorca. Their names? Right. Hafuda ben Cresques, Yehuda, son of Cresques, and his father is Cresques ben Abraham. Okay, a lot of people think that, oh, the Cresques family. No, not true. It's Cresques ben Abraham is the dad, and Jehuda ben Cresques is the son. And they made this map in 1375, and as you can see, Spain, Balearic Islands, Corsica, Sardinia, Italy, Greece, and all the way over here. What is it? Israel, right, is the country. And on all of his maps, he put a red slab of paint, a red, something marking this area with a red dash. What do you guys think that might represent for him on a map? Yes, the Red Sea. That's right. So for him, Jehuda Cresques is living in Mallorca, but he's always making a point to mention and to call out Israel, because for him, he's Jewish, and he always wants to be going back to Zion, going back to the land of his forefathers. And that's important when we start to talk about in the next room about forced conversions and how important religion is in that time frame. The one thing I will add is that there is a very famous rabbi named Rabbi Simon ben Sema-Duran. He has to leave after the attack of 1391. He goes to Algeria. He becomes a really big rabbi. I believe he's called the Tashbats, if I'm not mistaken, in Talmudic learning. And a lot of people know of this rabbi, but don't know that he's from Mallorca, because he went to Algeria, where he's become like the big rabbi of Algeria. But he's originally from Mallorca, which is very interesting. Let's all move to the other room, where we're gonna learn more about what happens next.
So this is like the basic, entry level to understand, what it is about Mallorca that is really, really so special. And I want to spend a little bit more time talking about the Catalan Atlas, okay? We're going to show you a short video to understand how important this map really was, made by Jehuda and his father, Cresques.
In the year 1375, the King of France, Charles V, had a desire to understand the known world. He requested from his friend and ally, Peter IV, the King of Aragon, to create for him a map. Peter IV and later his son John readily agreed. Now, despite some doubt, most historians believe that this commission was given to a Jewish cartographer by the name of Abraham Crescas. Abraham lived and worked in the port city of Palma on the island of Majorca. This was the largest of the Balearic Islands and had been a part of the crown of Aragon since its capture in 1229. Then, shortly thereafter, a Jewish community had arrived and a school of cartography was soon established. This school gained an immense reputation and was renowned throughout the entire Western Mediterranean as being the predominant school of map-making. The map that Abraham Crescas would create would be known as the Catalan Atlas and was to become a marvel of his age. The Catalan Atlas holds a critical spot in the history of map-making. By the latter end of the 14th century, Europe had made broad strides towards its relentless path towards globalization. The mapmakers of the Atlas, quite aware of this flood of new information, incorporated all the latest innovations and knowledge of their time. As a result, aspects of astronomy, astrology, history, and mythology to religion, navigation, science, and trade became integrated into the design. As we're about to see, the map became an amalgam. It included the latest reports of seagoing traders from a variety of faiths and backgrounds, the stories of Greek mythology, and excerpts from the Old Testament of the Bible. It displayed the knowledge of prominent people like Muhammad Idrisi, Honorius of Arun, and Pliny the Elder. But what's more, it showcased the lands that were traveled by sub-Saharan merchants, Middle Eastern caravans, and Alexander the Great and Marco Polo. The Catalan Atlas was initially created on parchment that was placed on several large wooden panels. It was folded and unfolded several times, resulting in the divisions of the map that one sees today. It consisted of the 3 known continents of the time. The coastlines that were well known to seagoing traders were in high detail, whereas the more inland areas were either left blank or were filled in with pictures and depictions of indigenous rulers, peoples, or animals. Going east from Mansa Musa are the labeled lands of Organa, Nubia, and that of Egypt, which sometimes the cartographer refers to as Babylon. Each kingdom along the way showcases their respective ruler, and eventually one arrives at one of the most striking features of the map, the Red Sea. And here the description says, quote, "This sea is called the Red Sea, which was crossed by the 12 tribes of Egypt. Let it be known that the water is not red, but that the bottom is that color. Through this sea pass most of the spices arriving at Alexandria from India." End quote.
So that's just, again, this idea of showing and sharing with all of you that Majorca, not necessarily on the map when it comes to Toledo and Cordoba and even Girona. You know, I make a joke on my in-person tours that Maimonides is from Cordoba. We have Nachmanides from Girona. Well, we'd like to think that we have Jafmanides, Jafuda ben Crescas, the world-famous medieval Jewish cartographer. And here we're going to show, I want to get us out to the streets. And there's actually a beautiful statue that I take people on our in-person tours, and I'm going to share that statue. It was dedicated in the year 2007, so it's been here for quite a while. And it's probably one of the few things that you can see when you come to Majorca that's actually, you know, usually I take you to a place where there's a church of Mount Zion that's built on top of where there once was the great synagogue. There's no mikvahs. There's not a lot that we can see because the Majorcan Inquisition, sadly, did an incredibly thorough job of extinguishing the Jewish flame, except for the people known as the Chuetas. But let's jump out into the streets right now, continue our tour, where we're going to see the statue of Jafuda Crescas. And then I will encourage all of you to please start putting your questions in the chat. So we'll have a wonderful question and answer period in just another few minutes.
I like the fact that we finish highlighting the positive stuff, beautiful contributions that Jews made to Majorca. This is Jafuda ben Crescas. He's missing the middle part, Jafuda, son of Crescas. and his father is Crescas, son of Abraham. And in 1375, he made the Catalan Atlas, which you can see the original of in Paris and in Barcelona, I believe. You can see that he's holding a compass. You can see that he's holding some scrolls, which are maps. And as you can see, Majorca is very proud of their famous Jewish cartographer, Jewish map maker. You know, there's a very famous Jewish guy from Cordoba. His name is Maimonides.
Dani, are you there? We've got some, seems like it's frozen. Let me see, do the rest of the people manage to see Dani? Thank you. Frozen, frozen, frozen. Yes, I can see. I'm just gonna write him. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Maybe the connection in Mallorca has, oh, here we are. All right. Okay, getting warm. I'll WhatsApp Dani, okay? I'll see what's happening to him. Okay, he's coming back. He's trying to back up. Okay, no worries. It happens. In the meantime, I saw some very interesting questions actually that I can't wait to ask Dani, especially what Amalia wrote about some Nazi descendants. I was also interested to hear, maybe I'll ask Dani afterwards, if what's the anti-Semitism today in Mallorca, and how is the Jewish community today, what their connections are. So yeah, if you have any other questions, it's a good opportunity now to see. I see that Steve has wrote in a question, and quite a few of you have been to Mallorca. I guess that now after this conversation, we all want to go spend some more time there. Let me see. He's trying to get back on. I'll resend him the link. Participants. I just spoke to Dani. He's trying to log in back. We will, in the end, provide you all the information about his tours and other websites and other films. He's actually, Dani's actually a film producer. So other films that he has done already about Mallorca and other places, actually. Let me see if he's in the waiting room. I don't have the one. Okay.
Great. All right. I'm back. Yes, this is exciting.
Okay, good. Because I didn't have much to say about Mallorca.
I know.
Could.
But there's a lot of people here on the call that have been here, so maybe they could have chipped in. So while I'm reconnecting to my computer system. I'm here on the phone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'd love to go ahead and answer some Q&A, Sophia, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think, because we've had some very interesting questions.
Please. I'm on my phone, so it's a little bit more complicated.
So first of all, there's a question from Amalia saying that her cousin lives in Mallorca and said that after the World War II, there were Nazis who purchased homes in Mallorca. And what do you know about that, and how valid is that information?
I don't actually know about the Nazis purchasing homes specifically, but I do know that there is a fascinating documentary that we're still waiting for English subtitles to come out on. Just was released ahead of our documentary that I'm really hoping I can reconnect and share the trailer with you all. But it's okay, I'll send the links to you afterwards. That there were Jewish Germans hiding in Majorca during some of the 1920s, 1930s, probably about 100. And during the Civil War, 1936 to 1939 here in Spain, Franco won and sent deportation letters to those Jews living in Mallorca to go back to Germany. Well, some of them knew what was waiting for them and actually committed suicide. And so there's an incredible story about Jews hiding in Mallorca and Nazis living in Mallorca as well. It was almost like a microcosm of what was happening in Germany was happening here in Mallorca.
Wow, amazing. And what would you say the situation is today? I've had a question here about the BDS, and I was wondering about anti-Semitism today in Spain, and specifically in Mallorca. What is the Jewish community made up?
So the Jewish community, just to give you all some numbers, there's about 1,000 Jews, we believe, that lives in the Balearic Islands. About 90% of that is probably in Mallorca. We probably have about 30 to 40 paying members of our synagogue right now. So a lot of Jews that are not connected, that are not interested in synagogue. I mean, we have Argentinians, French, German, Canadians. There's a Jew from Iran, a Jew from Turkey. We probably have about Jews from 30 different countries, one of each, but from all over. The Israelis, when you say the word synagogue, they turn and run the other way. You know, it's really interesting, the chemical makeup of the Jews living on the island. In terms of Chuetas, there's about 20,000 Chuetas that live on the island today, and that's not counting all the many different people with Chueta last names, the 15 famous last names that, I'm so sorry, I can't show you this 15 names until I'm connected. But if you look it up online, and someone could share a screen. The Chuetas that are living all over the world. Now, you asked about anti-Semitism. There's not really anti-Semitism that I have felt in the 8 years here, but it's mainly out of ignorance. No one has really met a Jew or seen a Jew. So there's no need, if you will, it sounds terrible, for anti-Semitism. Now, there is still a latent anti-Chuetism, which is totally a different form of anti-Semitism. What does that mean? For example, my friend who is about 30 years old, Yuke, I asked him, when was the first time you heard the word Chueta? He's from Mallorca. And he said that his younger sister was dating someone. And when she came home one day, his grandma asked, oh, who's your new boyfriend? And the grandma and the sister said, oh, his name's Alberto. And the grandma said, oh, what's his family name? Bonin. And then the grandma said, huh, Chueta. And this is just a couple years ago. So it's not like she was saying something bad or saying that you couldn't date him or whatever, but she was making a point to say that his family name is a Chueta last name.
And what would you say, how many of these Chuetas are interested back to in their Judaism or in their heritage, or is there a recent movement towards it or not necessarily?
Great question. Basically, my friend Mikel Segura, who is a famous writer here on the island who has returned to Judaism, likes to say that there's 5 different categories of Chuetas today. The one and the smallest are a group that have actually returned to Judaism or converted to Judaism, and they're about 10 to 12, 15 people, more or less, out of 20,000. Not a lot of people. Then there's the next group that's about, I'd say a couple hundred, if not 1,000,
that come to all of our events that we have when we do a Jewish cinema club, or if we have a Ladino concert, or if we recently did an open air sukkah. We built the first ever sukkah in Majorca with public funds, with the city hall that sponsored us to do a sukkot in the city center, which was really beautiful. We had conferences and lectures in the sukkah last year. One of the videos I was excited to share with you that I'm just going to have to share with you next time. And they come to these events, they connect to the Chueta identity and their past. They're interested in learning about it, but they don't want to convert. They don't want to, go to the synagogue. Then there's the largest group, which is apathetic. They aren't interested in going to Catholic mass, to church. They don't want to go to synagogue. They know, but they don't care. It's not something that is interesting to them. Then there's the group that I think is the most important, the one that we have to reach out to, are the people with this identity, with this history, don't even know about it. They have these last names and they don't know this incredible 600-year history that has come before them. And we think it's important that they should know. And then the last group, very, very fascinating, is the kind of anti-Chueta group that are Chueta, right? They're the people that are like super Catholic, and I've actually, encountered them, older generations when I've gone into their jewelry store, because most Chuetas had jewelry stores in this certain part of town, even as late as up into the 1990s. And we are trying to recuperate that legacy. I went in and I said, "Oh, look, your name is Taronji. Are you Chueta?" And this woman said to me, "No, I'm Catholic. I'm very, very Catholic. Go on, get out. I don't want to talk about it." Because she probably was discriminated against. She probably was, teased and picked on and made fun of growing up, which is a reality. And a lot of these people want it to be taboo. They don't want it to be talked about so much. So now it looks like I'm connecting. I'm going to go back to my computer and let's see if this works. I don't want to be on twice though.
Can you hear us, Dani? No, we can't hear you. You're on mute on one of your screens at least. But Dani, I think it's okay if you can't connect. So I think it's okay to continue with this. Okay. And maybe next time you're mute, please. I have another question for you. How do the authorities feel about the revival of the Jewish history, or this museum that you were showing us? Do you have support? Are you getting, what is the public feeling towards it in Mallorca?
So it's a very good comment, which is that, a lot of these people here in Mallorca are becoming interested in their history and wanting to reclaim this, history back. And there is a memorial that was just started in 2018, where the burnings at the stake took place. And I think they realized that for tourism purposes, it's very interesting. Look at Toledo, look at Cordoba, look at Girona. These are places that are on the map, and many, many tourists come to these places to see and learn about the history. Thank you, Brenda, for putting the 15 Chueta last names in the chat. That's very, very lovely. So this is what it's about. The City Hall is definitely supporting us. They have Jewish Culture Day. That was one Sunday. Now it's 2 months where we do films and we do concerts. Like I said, we did a Rosh Hashanah event underneath the cathedral where we blew the shofar. I mean, this was under the pandemic 2 years ago. It was really, really special. And so there is absolutely our film, our documentary, 1 hour long, Chueta Island, was the rights were purchased for the local TV station. And it just premiered a week ago. And it had 46,000 people watching it on the TV here in Mallorca. So it's really exciting to see people, wanting to learn about this history. And we actually, maybe some of you have heard of an organization called Limud. It's like a worldwide group that people come for Jewish learning conferences. And we started, my wife and I, Limud Mallorca. We've had 3 conferences now where at our height, over 150 people came out. We just did our 3rd one on right before Erev Rosh Hashanah. And it's really exciting to see people come who are not Jewish. Some are Chueta, some are not, who want to learn about Jewish history and Jewish culture. It's really, really exciting.
Fantastic. Really fantastic. I know that a lot of you are asking about receiving information about tours or receiving a link to this video. So yes, we'll be sending out a link to the recording of the video. We'll be sending out information of Dani's company, foundation, and other things that he showed us, and hopefully also his email. So if you have private questions, because I know quite a few of you have asked about finding your own family root or heritage. So I don't know if Dani can help you out with this, but he may just have the right connections to doing that. So somebody asked you about the plane to Miro. Is there any connection with Miro? He was from Catalan, but I don't know. Yeah.
So if you can find me, I know I'm on 2 places right now, but if you make me, I can share the screen.
Sure.
Show 15 names. And Edward is a really great question. These names that I'm about to share with you, yes, thank you. Oh no, I think you made the other Dani. Okay, there we go.
No, that's
Good. No, you're mute. You're on mute, Dani.
No, I was just saying you. Maybe you can make both of me co-host if that's possible.
I can make both of you. This is getting very weird.
Answer to Edward's question and yours as well is yes, the names are only from Majorca. So this name like Cortez or Miro or Vaz, or Martí, these are famous Spanish last names. They have to have had from Majorca in order to be considered, not be considered, if they're Chueta or not. So Joan Miró, the famous artist, his Miró family was always from Barcelona. His family never came from Majorca. So he is not Chueta. And Rafa Nadal is also not Jewish. Nadal actually means Christmas. Bon Nadal is what we say here in Catalan. Merry Christmas. Nadal is not one of these 15 last names, but perhaps his mother's side, which I'm blanking on her last name right now, she might have been some of the names that didn't make the list that were these infamous 15 last names. So there might have been over 300 last names that were in the Inquisition that were tried for being accused for being crypto-Jewish, but it's only these 15 last names that have received the stigma and the discrimination and the persecution and not being allowed to marry with the general rest of society. For those of you that are into genetics, it's a fascinating study because a DNA of the Chueta is less similar to their next door neighbor that they've lived hundreds of years and more similar to Sephardic Jews that are from Iraq or Iran. It's incredible, the DNA studies that are being found on the Chuetas. And just the last thing, yay, I can share my screen. The last thing, here are the names for those who aren't able to see in the chat. Sorry, I'm flying through the slides like this. The last thing I wanted to say, here are the names.
We're catching up. It's still on the maps, yes.
Here we go. These are the 15 last names of the Chuetas. And it's really interesting that there are certain genetic diseases that are found amongst the Chueta families, like the Mediterranean fever, which is a genetic disease that is really found because of all of this marriage within these same 15 families.
But today, these families are not necessarily marrying within each other. It's totally
This would have
opened
started in the 60s or 70s. I have the same Mikel Segura that I was telling you about. He is Chueta, and he married a non-Chueta, and the non-Chueta's family came to the wedding, but dressed in black. This is in 1960, because they were so unhappy with her choice in marrying someone who was Chueta. I'm not going to have time to talk about the food, the Jewish roots and the food today, but I do want to share with you just a little bit of insight of what's happening today in Majorca. So you talked about the tourism boom that happened in the 50s and 60s. I mentioned that the Ashkenazi expats came here. The dictator Franco dies in 75. In 77, a gentleman by the name of Nikolai Aguilo, Chueta, makes Aliyah. And he becomes an ultra-Orthodox rabbi that has 12 children. And his new name is Rav Nisan ben Abraham. He is Chueta. He lives in Israel. And I have the enormous pleasure to tell you that we now have a rabbi. It is him. He is the first rabbi originally from Majorca in 600 years. He is Chueta, and he comes 10 days every month to be with our community and to lead us in services. And he was just with us for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it was really incredibly special. Now you'll see a Limud Mallorca conference up on your screen. This is what happened in 2018. We expected 15 people, but over 90 people came. And then in August of 2018, you had a new board. 2 of them are Chuetas, myself, and a gentleman who converted to Judaism. He's from Girona. That's Ari Molina. He's right in the middle, holding the candelabra, the menorah here. And this up here, top right, is the memorial, right, that you see in Plaza Gomila today that was just put up in 2018. And the last historical event of that year was Tony Pina and Chiska Vaiz, 2 Chuetas on their second marriage, got married under a chuppah in Israel. And they had converted or returned to Judaism before this marriage. So this is a really big deal to have the first ever Chueta wedding take place in Israel. And then you have our other conference with over 150 people. Is there a Jewish revival taking place today? We sure think so. We have the documentary film. We have our work with Limud going into public schools and teaching about Holocaust education. And we have all of these virtual tours that we're doing. So if you want to be a supporter and want to learn more, there's so many different ways to engage with our different websites that will send out the links to Sophia and to Ari, who will hopefully pass that on to all of you. So I can't say thank you enough for hearing our story, for sharing, for learning, for connecting together. And really, I wish you all a Modim L'Simcha, Chag Sameach, Shana Tova U'Metuka, and really incredible to connect with you all today.
Thank you so much, Dani, and everyone really for joining this very special tour about the Jews in Majorca, which I'm sure we are all now going to investigate. I'm going to send out the links, and we all have, I have a lot of more things that I want to learn about to understand, because it is a very rich community and a very ancient history. So thank you very much, Dani. Thank you all for joining us. Shana Tova Modim L'Simcha, and we hope to see you again later on. Lehitraot. Goodbye. Have a good afternoon, evening, or night. Depends where you are.
Toda rabah.